Hey everyone, and welcome to the NBC Charlotte Sports Podcast. I'm Sports Director Nick Carboni. This week, we examine the conundrum, the dilemma, whatever you want to call it, that the Charlotte Hornets have found themselves in by way of Kemba Walker's All-NBA third-team selection last week. That means he's eligible for a Supermax contract. Only the Hornets can offer him $221 million over 5 years, possible $80 million difference from any other team. Question is it worth it to pay him all of that money? And for him, is it worth it to stay in Charlotte, or does he want to chase championships elsewhere? To help us examine all of that, we bring in Doug Branson from the Locked On Hornets podcast. They do a great job over there. They record 5 days a week here in the offseason as we lead up to free agency and the draft. Here's my conversation with Doug. Doug Branson, not Doug Benson, the comedian. Doug Branson is in the house from Locked On Hornets. Doug, what do you want to talk about today?
Well, I'm just glad you invited me here on this most holy of days. That, of course, is Glenn Rice's birthday.
Oh, okay.
So I know. I celebrate privately.
How old's G Rice?
I have no idea.
He's got to be pushing 50.
It has to be.
Yeah.
He looks great.
They could use him.
Well, even 50-year-old Glenn Rice, I think, could still knock down some shots, if Del Curry's any indication.
All right, so yes, of course we are here to talk about the Hornets and specifically Kemba Walker. Cut to the chase, no surprises there. This is a busy time of year for the podcast this offseason because of what's been going on. Tell us about your podcast first. You do it with Walker Meal.
Walker Mail.
The mailman. Nailed it.
Nailed it.
And has the subject basically of every podcast for the last 12 months been Kemba Walker related. It's specific to free agency.
Basically, what are they going to do? What should they do? What do we want them to do? I mean, all of the questions revolve around Kemba Walker because for the past 4 or 5 seasons, the entire franchise has revolved around Kemba Walker because he has grown so significantly as a player and turned into what might be a perennial all-star career.
Yeah, and listen, a lot of blame can be laid on the Hornets, and we will lay that blame today. But it's just fascinating when you take like a zoom-out view of it, and you just see this player go from like a mediocre guy with a mediocre shot to an elite point guard, all the while the team is just failing and failing and failing at team building around him, and it all comes to a head with this massive Supermax contract possibility just looming over everybody in what will be his 8th year, or I think 9th year.
This will be 9.
Yeah, so I mean, it's just fascinating how the last few years have kind of built to this moment.
No, that's correct, and you have to give most of the credit to Kemba Walker for being the epitome of a gym rat. That moniker is thrown around to a lot of players, but he legitimately worked on his game. He could have been satisfied. He had a championship at UConn and was getting big minutes with the Bobcats. He could have been satisfied with what he is and what he would be, but instead, Steve Clifford, coach at the time, basically came to him and said, look, you got to change your game if you want to become a star-level talent in this league. He trusted in Clifford and the development team around the Hornets then, credit to them, got Kemba Walker, helped to get Kemba Walker where he was, or where he is now. And so now they tried to build around him, and I'll say this, Nick. I mean, I credit the idea. It didn't pan out really at all like they wanted it to, but I credit the idea of trying to put a lot of good to really good pieces around him to try to make the parts better than the whole. Like once they got Nick Batum and he improved to the level that he did in that first season, you could start to see, hey, I'm starting to see the strategy that they're going for here, trying to rebuild without completely bottoming out for several years, sort of process level. But the problem with that strategy, as we found out, is that for that to work, you have to have 1 or 2 players significantly improve around Kemba Walker, and you have to have everyone stay healthy. And neither of those things really happened.
Batum's regressed. And I don't. You have to just hope at this point, because you're not getting rid of him, I don't think, in the next 1-2 years.
I don't think so.
I think you just have to hope that the guy figures it out and gets it out of his head.
That's right. Batum regressed. MKG did not significantly improve his jump shot. Cody Zeller could not stay on the floor. And Marvin Williams has had an admirable effort, but he's getting older. And so, none of those pieces that they committed to long-term around the same time that they committed to Kemba Walker worked out, and that's why they are in the financial position that they find themselves in now.
So I think it was Friday that the All-NBA teams came out. Give me how quickly did it take you to go, oh, Kemba got the All-NBA. Damn it, that means he can be eligible for a Supermax contract. I mean, was there any part of you that was, because we should be happy for him. We should be like, oh my God, this is so great. He's done all this work. He's gotten to this level. He's one of the elite players in the NBA. But it comes with that asterisk for Hornets fans now. Well,
it's weird, right, Nick? Because it felt like the ending of something as opposed to the beginning of something. Normally, when a player makes a third-team All-NBA after setting scoring records for a franchise scoring records, season scoring records, season three-point records, it feels like the beginning of something. But because of the financial situation that they find themselves in, this feels like the end of something. And I think I'm a realist. I'm a pragmatist. So I look at this and go, obviously it's disappointing that the franchise might not be able to hold on to Kemba Walker. But I also look at it from the perspective of, okay, this is the reality of their financial situation, and if they're not going to be able to put a team around Kemba Walker that's able to contend for the Eastern Conference, and I'm of the mind that if Kemba Walker, as well as he's played relative to Charlotte, I don't know if Kemba Walker is your number one highest paid player and also your most talented player really contends in an Eastern Conference that has Kawhi Leonard and could have Kawhi Leonard going into the future, has Giannis Antetokounmpo. I just don't see that contending for the Eastern Conference. So if that's the case, then the Hornets, despite the sentimentality around Kemba Walker and what he's done for the franchise, have to find a way to contend for the Eastern Conference if you ever want to see that sort of buzz mania back, in Charlotte like it was when they were first here.
So in that team building realm, there's obviously a lot of understandable distrust amongst Hornets fans in the franchise's ability to get to that point, to say, okay, we're going to pick a direction, and we're going to hit our picks, we're going to hit our free agent contracts, we're going to be able to do this. How much of that distrust is maybe mitigated with now Mitch Kupchak? Because all of that was before Mitch Kupchak came around.
Well, the big question mark is how much autonomy is Mitch Kupchak getting in his decision-making, and how much autonomy does James Borrego have to coach the team that he wants to coach? And if you listen to Borrego and you listen to Kupchak, they say, look, we've got enough leash to do the things that we want to do for this franchise, and if that's truly the case, then hopefully you see that bear out in trades, because that's been Kupchak's specialty when he was in Los Angeles. He remade several of those Lakers teams via massive deals that involved multiple teams, and that's what it's going to take if they want a solution now. If they don't want to wait, if they don't want to be patient and let some of these contracts come off the books, then they've really got to find some wizardry there and get multiple teams that are also against the ropes to play ball with them and release some of this salary that they've got invested into Marvin Williams, Nick Batum, MKG, Zeller, and Bismack Biyombo.
With Kemba, we don't know exactly what he's thinking right now. We know all of the things he's said publicly. A lot of it at the beginning was just overtly, I want to stay here, I love it here, this is where it needs to happen. Not a lot of NBA, he's like one of the rarefied NBA players in terms of like how he is with the media, how he is with his words, how he is or really isn't on social media. He's not a drama queen like a lot of these guys. But I think I noticed a change in his tenor as the season went on. Did you? Especially the jump interview and some of the things after the season about this is just a guy who wants to win. This isn't a guy who wants to watch the playoffs anymore. He doesn't want to watch all these other guys have these big moments in the postseason and him be sitting at home watching on TV.
Yeah, and that hasn't changed. I mean, he's always been an ultra-competitive player and an ultra-competitive person. And I think for many years he saw improvements. He saw a pathway for the Charlotte Hornets to contend with him at the helm. And I just think that you could see, to your point, you could see as the season drug on that he was getting more frustrated, both on the court and off the court. He was venting more of his frustration, and you kind of have to look for it in subtle ways, right? Because he is, as you said, he's not the kind of person that's going to come out and, put anybody on blast publicly or get out on social media and leave cryptic tweets or anything. So you really have to kind of dig in and try to find what you can. But he just generally looked more frustrated with how things were going. And I think he has every right to be, because he has been patient. He did take a pretty good deal for the Charlotte Hornets, $12 million. Even at the time, we said that was a little bit of a sweetheart deal. And
he specifically told his agent, get it done, I want to be in Charlotte, or you're gone. Like, I want this to work, no matter, maybe it is a little of a hometown discount.
Yeah.
Does he do that now with $221 million sitting on the table, possibly, or $190 from somebody else?
I mean, I can't imagine it being that kind of sweetheart deal. To me, he would have to get some amount more than he would get with another team at the max.
Yeah.
So that's 4 at 140. The max that the Hornets could give him is 5 at 220. Could that number somehow drift down $20-30 million in order to keep the Hornets under the cap? But again, then
that's what you would have to do. In my opinion, to justify it as the Hornets, are you gonna offer him less than the Supermax? Is that insulting to Kemba Walker?
It depends on what. I guess it depends on really what the market is telling you, and we don't have any indication of that yet, other than we know that there are suitors for Kemba Walker. But I would say this: if you're Kemba Walker, you're not giving them any kind of pay cut in order to keep them under the luxury tax. The only reason you would do it is if they presented you a plan.
Right.
Hey, you do this, we can get X player. We can move this guy. The problem with that, and this is what I've said all along, the problem with that is we know, we at least have reports that they've tried to move several of these other pieces that they've had, and other teams have said, no dice.
Yeah.
And so I just can't envision, and I don't know if Kemba and his team are getting together, I don't know if they can envision truly a path forward for the Charlotte Hornets that includes him and also makes the team better.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. I mean, you would have to have, it's like they can only guarantee him money and promises that so far haven't been delivered or haven't been hit on when they've been made. And
I'm sure he loves Charlotte. He loves the franchise. He's given a lot to the franchise. I'm not sure, other than getting them to the second round of the playoffs or possibly contending in the Eastern Conference, like what else could he accomplish in Charlotte? And I think we often underrate this idea of this human element of, hey, I've done that. Now I should try to do this.
Yeah.
Like, we've all been in that situation in a job where we're like, man, I've been at this for a while. Mm-hmm. I feel like I've maxed out a little bit. Maybe I should go try something else. Like, that exists within these.
Yeah, maybe for Kemba Walker, that means going somewhere and not being the number 1 or number 2 option, but being on a really, really good contending team year after year until that contract expires in his mid-30s.
And there will be those opportunities. So really for Kemba, what it comes down to is he motivated by top dollar? Is he motivated by being the top dog, or is he motivated by something else altogether, this idea of, I would like to go win championships? And we've seen it across the board, whether it's Kyrie, LeBron, Giannis. They all have these different ideas of what their legacy means or what it means to be an NBA player and what they want people to remember them for. And we're going to quickly find out what that is for Kemba Walker.
I think we already know, right? I mean, if it comes down to money and, being the best Hornet ever or chasing championships and having being put in the position to hit big shots and big playoff games, I think that's where Kemba wants to be. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Just following his career and listening to what he says.
Exactly. I'm in total agreement with you there. I think that Kemba is not the kind of person that completely values top dollar, because we saw that with Carmelo Anthony, right? Like he turned down opportunities to join contending teams to take top money in New York, and he made no bones about it. That's never been my indication of who Kemba Walker is.
Okay, so now the Hornets that's just like such a throw your hands up in the air position to be in right now, but that's the position they're in. So now you have the draft, which comes weeks before free agency. So first of all, we wonder if they're even going to make a selection at number 12 in the first round? What are the benefits to trading out of that selection?
Well, the benefits would be that you at least have an opportunity to put a package together that could shed salary or bring in talent, because we know that deals are hard to get done in the NBA sometimes, but the 2 points at which they are easiest to get done are the trade deadline and the draft, because teams are getting a little desperate. Other teams have other fan bases too who want their team to make a move and make something happen, and so often you can find opportunities during those moments. So that would be, to me, the biggest benefit is you can put a package together to either attract Kemba Walker or help reset yourself for the future, because that's, they don't want to do anything that harms them, because several of these salaries that are getting picked up right now, like Marvin's and MKG's, those go away after a year. So if you stay patient and don't add salary, you'll be okay. So you don't want to add salary, but you can also find some creative ways to move a Biz, to move a Nick Batum. But the problem with the Hornets team building strategy over the past several years has been ultimately impatience. And this goes all the way back to 2014, right? They weren't able to bring in Gordon Hayward because Utah matched and they kept Gordon. That turned into Lance, and Lance turned into Hawes, and Hawes turned into Miles Plumlee because they panicked and wanted to try to make the playoffs.
Are we going Timothy Mozgov at some point on this?
Right.
Oh my
so yeah, exactly.
goodness.
So Plumlee turns into
the
Dwight
chain
Howard.
reaction that becomes Timothy Mozgov.
Howard becomes Mozgov, begats Bismack Biyombo, who was once a Hornet. It all comes full circle.
They had a fun night with the marketing team on the one night. Bringing back Biz.
But just all that to say is, like, these dominoes keep falling because they keep trying to find creative ways to get out of their situation while also contending, because some teams in the middle of that cycle would have said, okay, hold on a minute, we got to rethink this whole idea. But they, for whatever reason, maybe it was financially motivated, ticket sales, whatever it was, they decided to keep on their track, and they patched up the boat, and the boat stayed afloat, but it was never ready for a big battle.
If Kemba Walker leaves in free agency, is this team in tank mode? Like, what direction is this franchise in? Are we talking 2-3 years of barely anybody at the games? Hopefully you win 15 to 20 games a year. What do you envision as the next couple of years being like?
Well, if they didn't keep Kemba, next season they would still have 10 players that are not great players, but NBA replacement level talents. You also have young players in Miles Bridges and Dwayne Bacon, who showed a ton of improvement at the end of the season, plus Malik Monk, who still has that flash in the pan ability, and if he gets stronger and is able to take more ball handling responsibilities, could also be a plus for them. So if you see that all of those things fall into place, the entire team stays healthy, I think they win more than 20 games, but certainly they're not a playoff level team. Now, the years after that, again, so much salary comes off the books, it would really be up to the franchise whether they wanted to try to go after big free agents and continue to win, or if you truly do bottom out at that point and try to accumulate picks. The problem with that, of course, is that the NBA has shifted the rules.
Yeah.
It's made it a lot tougher to do that. Now, the last time they went into tank mode, they went into it for 1 year, and it was a really bad year. I mean, they
11?
did the tank,
and look how that turned out.
Right, and so
that's even harder now, like you said.
That's always the danger. I think the best thing for the franchise to do is just take it year by year, be patient, shed some of this salary, and use Kupchak and his ability to, and his relationships and his credibility with the rest of the league to try and draw some talent here in the next few years.
And, with Kupchak, and we kind of talked about this earlier, I do kind of make myself separate him from what's happened here before, because I don't think he's proven yet either way. I think obviously he has a pretty good career, a lot of hits in his career, some misses. But I think, he's was brought in here to have that autonomy, like you said. I don't think he would have come here without it. And I just think that we can't discount him yet. I don't think you can yet based on the Rich Cho era and what came before that too.
No, I totally agree. Although I've said that he will have to have early successes, and I think if you look back to that last draft, bringing in Miles Bridges and Devontae Graham, I think you can put checks beside both of those boxes that Miles is going to be a really good role player at the bottom level, and if he develops some ball handling skills, then all of a sudden you could be talking about a player that could make a future All-Star game. And then and Devontae Graham might have to take over some point guard responsibilities, and seems like he'll be able to do that. Okay, so he Kupchak didn't get many opportunities to draft in Los Angeles because they were always sacrificing picks for winning now and bringing in players. So, but the few opportunities that he did get up at the top of the draft towards the latter end of his Lakers career, they were bringing in pretty good talent. And you can look down his history and see some good stuff down at the bottom of the first draft and into the second round as well. I'm really encouraged by the fact that they are valuing second round picks.
Yeah.
That they are valuing just bringing in more picks as opposed to sacrificing those like they did in the Rich Cho era. I think that's a positive. But to your point, we've yet to see Kupchak swing the big deal. And maybe that happens around draft time. I think that's, when you look at all the players that the Hornets could possibly get at 12, there's no option that really excites you as much as the opportunity for him to swing the big deal.
And that's what I was going to ask you next. Is there any, when they come out with the list every time of the workouts, it's like, Bruno Fernando, that kind of perked me up a little bit. Okay, he's got some real potential. But is there anybody at 12, when you look at the history of 12 and you look at the Hornets' history in that range, that really just makes you think, okay, we have to probably stay here? Because I think the more enticing thing is what you said, to make a deal, to free something up, to get rid of a contract.
Yeah, I think it is move it. If they're unable to do that for whatever reason or are uninterested in doing that, then I think, you should be okay with the Hornets taking a big swing at 12. So a player that may be falling like a Bol who looks like he's kind of trending back towards the 20s, but has these, because of health issues, if the medicals check out, but he has these, the ability to shoot, he's over 7 feet tall, enormous wingspan, get somebody that's either a freak athlete or just physically a freak and roll the dice and take a chance. Jackson Hayes falls into that category of an elite athlete. I think a guy like Bruno Fernando, who is so big and yet so athletic, they're calling him raw offensively, though. I've watched his tape. I don't feel like he's completely raw offensively. I think he's
working on the shot. I think he's expanding it a little bit.
Yeah, so I think Bruno would also be a player that he's mocked everywhere right now. Like some have him in the beginning of the second round. Yeah. So I think if they keep the 12th pick, take a swing, be bold. Last season they were really trying to put a playoff team around Kemba Walker. So you go with the Miles pick. Miles was a safe pick, and he played like it. But he played well. But I think in this situation, you take the big swing.
All right, Doug, where can we find your work and where can we find the podcast?
Yeah, listen to Locked On Hornets. You can find it on iTunes, Stitcher, Overcast, wherever you get podcasts. Just search Locked On Hornets. We're on 5 days a week. Myself, Walker Mail, and Kanata Edwards as well. Check us out on Twitter at Locked On Hornets.
Percentage Kemba Walker stays in Charlotte.
40.
I have to ask you the dumb TV question I end this segment. 40%.
40. I'm going to go under only 40 because it's under 50, and I think it's less than the 50 for sure. So 40, 41, 42, maybe 49. I don't know.
So you would be 50. 8 to 9% surprised if he stays in Charlotte.
I think so. I just feel like when Kemba gets alone in a dark room and gets contemplative and thinks about, okay, I've got this deal, but I've also got this opportunity to do something different, to take my career in a different direction. I just feel like ultimately that will win out. And honestly, if you're a Hornets fan, I know you're going to be disappointed that Kemba leaves, but at the end of the day, look at how much he did for the franchise. Yeah. I would just applaud him and say well done and look forward to what the Hornets can do and move on as a franchise.
Yeah, it'll be tough to see, but I think, I don't know, an unbiased reporter, but as a fan, I would kind of just be like, okay, he did all he could here, like you said, and I'm being rooting 100% for the guy.
Yeah, except
for 2 to 4 times a year.
Oh, that's true.
All right, Doug Branson, thank you very much. All right, thanks yet again to Doug Branson. He and Walker do a great job on that podcast. Check it out, especially this time of year as we lead up to the draft and Kemba Walker's free agency. Going to be really interesting for Hornets fans right now and kind of scary as well. All right, you can find our sports podcast on Spotify and on iTunes. It's the NBC Charlotte Sports Podcast. Just look for the red logo with the Charlotte skyline built in it.